Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the ROS Media channel. I'm back again with Ian, my good friend, who is our president and founder of the Republic of Old Souls. If you're joining us today, you're probably starting to realize that the cost of living crisis isn't an accident. It's a digital enclosure. You've been playing a game of Monopoly as a pawn and as a debtor. Last Saturday, we revealed our flagship, which is the Monopoly Game Changer protocol. We showed you how to flip the board, how to reclaim signature credit that you've left on the table since the age of 18, and be able to move your family, your assets into what we call a private asset fortress protocol that the system cannot penetrate. But with that life-changing information came a lot of questions as well, particularly from new members. And today we're going to unpack that. We're going to answer those questions. So, Ian, great to have you with us. Should we dive in?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're doing. So it's what I do most of the time. So I think we should get into the meat and bones of it. Absolutely.
Okay, we had a lot of questions. We had people from literally all over the world on Saturday's webinar. It was fantastic to see. Even people as far away as Thailand were on the webinar, which was amazing. We launched live chat, which was fantastic as well. We got a lot of support, a lot of members helping each other in the live chat, which was great to see as well. And also a lot of questions. So we answered as many as we could, or I answered as many as I could in the chat, but we've also collated together all your questions from registration, and that's what we're going to go through today. And we've put them into categories. So the first category, Ian, is really to do with the vision of what we're doing, and then also identity. You know, what's the strategic authority behind this identity shift as well? So the first question is, at what specific point does the concept of sovereignty move from a theory to a practical tool in this financial world that we live in?
Well, it's really about standing, really. It's standing and how you operate, really. It's those two things.
Yeah.
The problem that nearly everybody's got is that they've been registered as the agent of a birth certificate construct, which I've spoken about many times. But it's a very, very clever deception, and you get to play the game of Monopoly through the player piece, and the player, the living man, woman, never gets to step on the Monopoly board. But everything they do is on the board, mostly. Well, certainly in commerce.
Yeah.
Not maybe other things. But in the world of commerce, which is what dominates most people's thoughts and their activities, everything is being played out on this Monopoly board, and everybody's playing it as a debtor. They're also playing it without realizing it. They're playing it as the executor de son tort, which is it's an unusual phrase that you don't hear very often. So I'll tell you what it means. It's Latin for the executor of all the wrongs. So you see that the registration of the birth certificate was a trap. Your mum and dad didn't realize that what they were doing was setting their baby up for, later on in life to be trapped via this registration, taking up the agency role, the living being the agent of the birth certificate construct. But worse than that, it's not just about being an agent, and you don't really want to be an agent, or you may want to be when you know that you can actually take advantage of that as well. But in the game of Monopoly, you don't really have a very clean standing, because you're operating as if you were the birth certificate construct. So we've all done it, even right back at school. They call your name out, or they used to, on a register.
Yeah.
Smith, Brown and Jones, put your hand up if you're here. And of course, if your name, or what you thought was your name, was called out, you put your hand up and said, yeah, I'm here. So what you're actually doing there is holding yourself out. Holding out is a term in the law for representing that you are the birth certificate construct. And that event of holding out takes away all of your rights. So you have no standing anymore, which is why the living man, woman, when they walk into a courtroom, never has any standing, because they have, for most of their adult life, if not all of it, been holding themselves out as a birth certificate construct, where using the name of the birth certificate construct is a fraud in its own right, because it's you. And the name on the birth certificate is registered to the state. It's their name. We've all been using that name as if it's our name. It's not. And we've been we're operating as the agent for the birth certificate construct, which is on the Monopoly Board, as a debtor. So you've got two problems really with standing and what you're doing on the Monopoly Board. You are the agent for a birth certificate construct and using its name. So that means that you've lost your standing as the living man, woman. You no longer got any credibility really on the board, because from the board, looking at the living man, woman, the living man, woman is the executor to son tort, which really is like a fraud, because you're using this name in fraud. So you've lost your standing without even realizing it. And then to compound the problem, the player piece on the Monopoly Board is moving around the board as a debtor, and doesn't really have any rights, can only issue debt because it's a banker. The birth certificate construct is the banker under the Bills of Exchange Act. So it can issue promises to pay in the future using the signature of the living man, woman as the agent to generate these securities which get pushed out onto the Monopoly Board. But it can't do anything other than, on the Monopoly Board, it has to go out and create it has to do things economically to create cash flows that come in that it can use to then have a budget. It's like a ledger that it can then issue new promises to pay up to the limit of the ledger that it's got, because it's gone out and done something to create cash flows and economic revenues coming in. And it's like it's just got a budget, but it can't do much more than issue negotiable instruments on the Monopoly Board. It certainly can't own anything, because all it gets is the equitable title. It can't own the legal title. It very rarely ever owns the legal title to anything. So it has, if you think of it like it's a piece on the Monopoly Board that can have an experience on the board. It can go round the board. It can use things on the board that don't belong to it. It can never own anything on the Monopoly Board. It's just like renting a hotel room, really. You know, you have to keep on paying for it all the time. If you want to stay there on the board as the player piece, you're going to be paying a lot of rent. Everything you do, you've got to pay rent for it. And rent, by the way, I frame rent as tax, because to me, you're paying tax to use the things on the Monopoly Board. So it's just like renting. And if you stop paying your rent, then you get a lot of problems. Yeah, the landlord wants to throw you out, and that's exactly what goes on with the Monopoly Board. So you've got a standing issue, you've got an operational issue on the Monopoly Board, and those two problems are addressed via the Monopoly Game Changer.
So, I mean, we coined the phrase hamster wheel, don't we? And it's just a genius level hamster wheel that people are on. I think they even did studies, didn't they? I think Henry Ford did some studies on what was the optimum amount of hours for somebody to be working. What's the sweet spot that doesn't completely exhaust them, but keeps them tired enough to not be able to pursue their dreams, to not be able to pursue the things they want to pursue. And that is where the 40-hour working week came from, just to give them a little bit of respite. I mean, the weekends aren't really for people to enjoy themselves anymore. The weekends are to recover. So they go back and they do it all again on Monday morning. So just kind of following on from that, the next question is, what is the true meaning of the all caps name? And is there evidence that this legal fiction is actually a trust created at birth?
Well, there isn't anything necessarily written down to evidence the existence of a trust.
No.
But there is the action of creation of a trust. So your mum and your dad, they didn't realize that they put the baby into trust because they basically signed up paperwork for the registration, the birth certificate, and they handed that baby over effectively. Well, they handed the placenta over in most cases. So that is the registered entity that the registration of the birth certificate then is recording. But because the baby is linked to the placenta, you've got this natural DNA linkage, because obviously the placenta was connected to the baby. That's your joinder right there. It's the DNA joinder. Agency is actually more powerful than just a word. It is actually centered on DNA, because the registration is the placenta. That's the birth certificate construct. That dies. The estate then is a decedent estate. The legal person is really a decedent estate. Well, all estates are trusts, you see. If you look at probate, you realize that probate is really about trust. And you don't have to have an agreement. Nobody has to give you a trust indenture or a trust agreement to have a trust. And if I hand you my pen and you say, I'll look after it for you, we've just created a trust. Nearly everything going on the Monopoly board is based on trusts. The whole board itself is a trust, effectively. So any action of two parties who exchange things, one party is giving over something to the other party for safekeeping, that creates a trust. You don't need a bit of paper to create it. The all caps name, well, that's, there's been a lot of research on this. I did a lot of research on this. I think the best way to explain it is the all caps name is representative of the player piece, which is able to play the game of commerce, because it is a corporate entity. It has a corporate nature to it. It's on the Monopoly board, which is all corporate. It's playing the corporate game of Monopoly as a debtor. It's artificial. And if you look at English and look at the correct way of writing English, you have names. You have the first letter is normally an uppercase letter, and then you have lowercase characters, and then you have uppercase, lowercase. So in my case, Ian Clifford was the name that my mum and dad put on the birth certificate, but that was in proper English. So a high case or uppercase first letter I, then AIN as the lowercase, and then Clifford, uppercase C, LIFFORD, lowercase. That's proper English. And if you look in the law dictionaries, that's proper English for a name. But if you spell the name Stamp, which was the name on the birth certificate that my mum and dad registered, Stamp all in capital letters, that's a corporate name. That's not a proper name. No. So it's a bit of I guess it really means corporate, and it's not living. It doesn't really represent the living man or woman. The proper name does. The uppercase name is corporate. It's the name of the birth certificate construct, which has been registered to the Crown. It's or the state. It's their trade name, really, because they've got dominant control of it. And it's like if they set up a business with the name of Stamp, the stamp business, it's registered to them. They can kind of control it, and they might lease it to Ian Clifford for use, but they still control it because it's theirs. And that's kind of how it works on the Monopoly.
Yeah. I mean, if you want a comparison to that, just go on to Companies House and look at any company, any limited company that's been formed on Companies House, it will always be listed in capital letters, always, never lowercase.
And gravestones as well. That's a real big giveaway. I mean, you go to the grave, you never see any name in lowercase. It's all upper and lower. So it's never upper and lower. It's always upper. It's always uppercase.
Yeah.
Because that's the death of the corporate entity, really. Although it gets a bit complicated because there's still probate going on. So the corporate entity looks like it's died, but it was already dead. It was dead on arrival. That's one of the shockers that you learn when you get into this subject.
Yeah. Okay, next question. And again, I think we had a lot of new people on the webinar that may have been looking into this, the freedom space, shall we say, and have come to the webinar as well on Saturday. This next question is to do with that very popular term or phrase, straw man. And the question is this protocol related to the straw man theory? And how does that affect our standing in the current corporate jurisdiction?
Well, a straw man is a nom de plume. It's like a name that you go by. It's like a persona that you might go by. So a bit like an author has a name. They call themselves some other name for their books. Yeah, that's a straw man. It's like it's a front. It's not the real substance of the man or woman. It's not representative of that. It's a bit of a front. And we're not really. I mean, I think a lot of people like the notion of a straw man. They like that notion that the straw man is a nom de plume for them. But of course it isn't, because when you unpack it and say, well, what is the birth certificate construct? If it's a decedent estate, how can it be the living man or woman? It can't be. It's dead. It's deceased. It's artificial. So why would you want an artificial decedent estate to be your straw man? You wouldn't. No. In the same way as if you set up a company, you wouldn't go around saying that company is my straw man. You just wouldn't. You'd say the company is the company, whatever the name of the company is. Yeah, that's what you would say, I think. Yeah. So I think where this has come from is in 1970s. It kind of started off in the United States, and the free man movement started off, and then people started writing books and guides on straw man theory. And some of it is true. There's no doubt that you're using it as a commercial player piece on the Monopoly board, but it isn't you. And anybody who believes it is them is again, it always comes back to the misunderstanding of agency. The agent is not the principal. The agent can represent the principal and be responsible for the principal, but the agent and the principal are two separate entities. So you don't really have a straw man. You have an agent and principal arrangement, and that's what you have. And if I could only get more people to get their head around it, all these other notions that, I mean, we're doing a good job here, I think, but all these ideologies that people are believing in, would start to make more sense to them if they could just lose this, this belief that they are separate from the birth certificate construct and they're not responsible for it, because they've now realised it's not them. But then they hold them. Then they start talking about the straw man, and the straw man is a nom de plume for them. So it's an oxymoron. The whole thing doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. But I don't think people really think about what they are saying or what they're believing in. I think they just repeat what other people say and what other people believe. But when you unpack it and look at it forensically, you can't be a straw man. You are a living man or woman. You cannot be an artificial construct, but you can be its agent. And that's all you really need to know. All the other things that people talk about are misleading at best and disastrous at worst. You can go to jail because holding on to this belief that you are not going to bend to the will of the, you know, Caesar's will on the monopoly board, the legal system. You're not going to bend to that will. You're going to stand your ground. You're not that birth certificate construct, and you could end up in jail. And as you interviewed that the wife of the fellow who went to jail,
I did,
for his belief.
Yeah. Okay. So next question is, how does the ecclesiastical trust or the status of a ministerial ambassador protect us from state demands like jury service or speeding tickets? Again, it's this misconception or misunderstanding of agency.
Well, the truth is it doesn't. And all it does is, if you imagine, I mean, I use an analogy that I think everybody can understand, right? So let's imagine that there was a public meeting and you had to go to the door and say who you were, right? Before they let you in this building. If you went along and said, "Oh, my name's Ian Clifford," if I went along, I'm Ian Clifford, they'd go, "Oh, it's just another Joe Soap, let him in, you know, is his name on the list? Let him in," yeah? Because his name might be on the list. But then the Pope comes along with his robes on and stands there. And they go, "Oh," everyone starts running around because the Pope's arrived. Yeah? Well, whatever the name of the Pope is, because they change quite frequently. I don't know the current name of the Pope. It's one thing I don't know. Whatever his name is, because it generally is a he, I think, they're going to treat him very differently because he's turned up as the Pope. Because he believes in the Catholic Church, and that gives him an elevated standing. So when you're an envoy of the Republic of Old Souls, you are an envoy for a belief system, and the belief system is very simple. It's, you know, don't deliberately cause harm to anybody. I mean, you may inadvertently cause harm, but you haven't deliberately intended it. Operate as the creditor. As the living man, woman, as creditor to the monopoly board, signature credit, etc., and the beneficiary of everything that's on the board that you put on there, and basically, you know, just live peacefully, and that's your belief. If you want to be an envoy of Republic of Old Souls, you don't have to go to mass every Sunday to be, you know, to believe in that way of living. And the Pope obviously believes in a lot of Catholic doctrine and a lot of other stuff, which I'm not going to go into because I don't think the webinar's about this. But you get the sense of it, yeah. It's about standing. It's like the policeman stands at your door and he's got a uniform on. It's like, oh, better take notice of that guy because he represents something. Well, when you're an envoy of the Republic of Old Souls, you represent a ministry. And that's the same as the Pope turning up. But I hope that analogy has helped.
No, I think that clears it up a lot. It like you said, it creates an elevated standing for you. I guess the question from the member would be, well, how does that elevated standing, you know, does that have any impact on things like jury service, or if I'm taken to court, or anything of that nature?
Well, the practical effect of it is that if you want to, let's say there's a problem on the monopoly board, it's a legal problem, it's a debt problem, it's a court problem, it's happening in the court system somewhere on the monopoly board. If you want to represent the corporate fiction, the birth certificate construct, and you are the executor de son tour, at the moment, you don't really have much standing. No. So you go in that courtroom and the judge is going to go, he already knows that you're a fraudster because you've been using the name of the birth certificate construct from day one, from whenever you became 18. So he already knows, she knows that you lack standing. You're basically, and worse than just being a fraudster, he'll actually look at you, she will look at you as an imbecile, a ward of the state, because you haven't realised who you are. No. You haven't made your declaration that you're alive, which is part of the envoy protocol. You are making a declaration of life, which is important, If you look at the Sescovay V Act, it's talking in there about you can be considered lost, abandoned across the seas unless you declare that you're alive. So you're declaring you're alive.
Yeah.
And then you're also declaring that you're the occupant of the office of the General Executor, which is a hell of a mouthful. But you've got to imagine, if you imagine what's going on here, you've got artificial constructs on the Monopoly Board, one of which, of course, is the birth certificate construct. And then every artificial construct, a title like a doctor, a physicist, a teacher, a policeman, a Mr., a Mrs. These are all titles, and every title, Prime Minister, President, they've all got an office.
Yeah.
And you might be thinking, well, why on earth would anybody want an office? Well, that's because the title, the Mr., Mrs., President, Prime Minister, Doctor, whatever, is a corporate fiction. It's a corporate entity, and it therefore needs an office. And so you can occupy its office as the General Executor. And when you do that, now that elevates your standing, because you're no longer the executor de son tour of the birth certificate construct. You now occupy the office of the General Executor over the decedent estate. So you've elevated your standing, and you believe in the ideologies of the Ministry of the Republic of Old Souls, which gives you additional credibility as an envoy. And if you look at the law treats envoys of religious orders differently. Gives them a little bit more of an elevated status. Now, you don't have to be praying and kneeling on the ground or any of this religious stuff that a lot of people might want to do. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but you don't have to do any of that to have a belief and a belief in being peaceful and operating as the creditor predominantly. That's all you need to believe in, as I mentioned earlier. And because the Republic of Old Souls is getting bigger, and more people are joining it, it has a presence. It's like it's like the Military Order of Malta. If you go and look at that Military Order of Malta, you'll see that they've been around a long time, hundreds of years actually, and they have a presence. They don't have any land. They don't have, an army or a navy or anything like that. No. But they do have passports, and they are recognised as a nation. And that's what I'm aiming for the Republic of Old Souls. We haven't got it yet, and you can't go through an airport with a bit of paper that says you're an envoy and let me through, because they're not going to let you through. But in the future, the nation status, really, its recognition is achievable if there's enough of you to be recognized. And if you've got something going on which is warrants to be regarded as a nation by other nations. That does take a while, though, to get that status as a nation.
Okay. So that's the first section. The next section of questions is really to do with some more of the mechanics and a bit more education on the protocols themselves, Ian. So the first one is, how exactly does my signature create credit energy? And why does the system claim my signature is its greatest asset?
Well, the whole board itself, the Monopoly Board, is artificial, based on ledgers, based on credit and debit ledgers. So on one side, you've got the creditors, and on the other side, you've got the debtors. Well, nearly everything on the Monopoly Board is a debtor ledger, which is why it's all negative. So when you sign, the living soul is signing, because obviously an artificial construct can't sign anything. It doesn't have any ability to sign, but it can. The agent for it can sign, and it's the agent, which is the living man, woman, who's signing something, and that signature really is an intention to transfer energy. And when you think about, if you think about it, there's a lot of logic in it, actually, because if you wanted to pay someone to cut your hedge, and you didn't have any money, you might say to them, I'll tell you what, I'll wash your car and your wife's car if you cut my hedge. Yeah. And because what you're then doing is you have to use some of your energy to wash the cars, don't you?
Yeah.
And the other guy is going to use some energy to cut the hedge. So there's an exchange of energy going on there. There might not be any money. That would be called bartering, back in the day. Well, generally speaking, bartering was doing something for somebody else. And the act of doing is like you're extending your energy into something, and you're exchanging it for something something coming back to you. And that's really where it comes from. So the signature is just really ratification of a transfer of energy from the living soul onto the monopoly board, because there is nothing other than credit energy on the monopoly board, really. That's the whole what we call money system. It's all credit energy.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's a good analogy. The next question is to do with CUSIPs. And the question is, where do we find the CUSIP numbers or bonds associated with our birth certificates? And how do we reclaim ownership of them? So again, information gap.
Information gap. Yeah. So what we've got here is a lot of people believing that the birth certificate is a traded security. It's not. No. It enables traded securities to spring into existence, but it's not a traded security itself. And a lot of people still believe that somehow you can cash it in, you can send it to the treasury and say, hey, you're holding on to my money, give it to me. Or you can take it to the bank and say, this is a security. I'm going to issue you a promissory note, and I'm going to put my birth certificate credentials on it, and that promissory note's going to pay off my mortgage. And literally people are doing these types of things. Now, they really are. And of course they don't work, because it's not how the monopoly board system works. So the birth certificate itself, you can't cash it in, because it is a banker. It's representative of a banking entity. It's not a security in its own right. No. It's a corporate entity that is operating as a banker under the Bills of Exchange Act, and because it's got that status as a banker, it can issue these promises to pay in the future, which is energy. This is just human energy being transferred onto the monopoly board that becomes a debt. Everything on the board is negative. But even though it looks positive, it's actually negative. So I don't know if that's answered the question or whether I need to go into it deeper. But
no, I think that has. The only other question was, where do we find the CUSIP numbers?
Right.
So maybe how does that process work?
Well, you see, there's people selling courses out there that allegedly you can type in your birth certificate registered number and type in some other numbers that you might have on the social security number, like the SSN number or the national insurance number or whatever the number is in the country you're in, for this card that you sometimes get when you come of age, which is not yours, of course. It's the social insurance for the birth certificate construct for the person. And people are believing that if you type that in to a Fidelity system is the favorite one, you type the reference number in and it pulls up this investment fund that is got a CUSIP number, and it's like the XYZ traded securities fund, and people go, aha, that fund is holding my birth certificate. It's that my birth certificate is a component of that investment fund, and that therefore I have to be able to cash it in because I've just found it. It's on the Fidelity system. Well, there is a fundamental flaw with it, and I've tried it. You can type in a reference number and it comes up with an investment fund. Well, then you type in another reference number and it will still come up with the same investment fund. So it's a bit of a fundamental flaw with that way of trying to triangulate and do forensic research. And why do you need it is more the question. You don't need to know the CUSIP number of your birth certificate because there isn't one. You don't need to know it even if there was, because you actually need to know the CUSIP numbers of the securities that the banks are trading as nominees for you. You don't need to go anywhere near the birth certificate to recoup signature credit energy.
Okay, perfect. So next question is, what's the correct way to autograph a name to ensure we are acting as the living person and not the corporate agent?
Well, you can put a semicolon. You can put, in my case, I did my name change on Depol because I didn't want to be recognised as Stamp anymore, because I know what that is. So I changed by Depol to Ian Clifford, knowing that is still a corporate fiction name, but at least it's not the name on the birth certificate. So it was a sort of a halfway house that I did it a few years ago. So the way that you can sign, if you want to sign, is you can put the Christian names. I'm going to say that because that's what it says in the law books.
Yeah.
Ian Clifford, uppercase I, uppercase C, is the Christian names, that proper names. And then you can put a semicolon and another name, whatever the other name is. And underneath, you can put agent. You can just write the word agent underneath. I mean, there's other phrases you can put underneath. But just writing agent underneath is enough, because you've made a declaration then that that you're not this corporate fiction. You are in fact the agent for it, and that just put agent underneath.
Okay. All right. Next question. Again, going back to the bonds, how can we use these protocols to claim the bonds that courts create during cases, or even to assist in getting someone out of jail?
Yeah, I wrote a whole research paper on this. It's one of the most dangerous beliefs that I've ever researched. Which is the court case bond myth. There are people who actually have tried this and have gone to jail doing it, literally. They're in court for some misdemeanor, and they try and hand over a bond to the judge to bond the case. And they claim that the bond is backed by the birth certificate. And therefore, in a nutshell, they frame it like the court case is a commercial transaction going on. The judge is a banker.
Yeah.
The court case is nothing to do with the law. It's to do with commerce. And if you want to discharge the debt, which is the misdemeanor, the felony, the whatever it is, the charges against the defendant, whatever they might be, you can pay them with handing over a bond to the judge. So you've now funded and discharged the case. That's one ideology, and people, there's actually guides, like really thick guides that people have written to how to do it. I studied it and got more and more concerned by people using it, because I could just see people, you could literally go to jail doing that, and some people have, because the court case, everything is commerce. So I agree with that. Every court case is a commercial transaction.
Yeah.
But the judge is not operating like a banker. The judge is just operating as a judge, and the notion that you can cash in something and again, it's the birth certificate belief that there's some hidden fund you can access. It's not true. It's the biggest gift that the Monopoly Board gave us was the ability to create negotiable instruments using the banker entity. That is the biggest gift that anybody, if you could wrap that up in a present, that would be the best gift that you could ever receive in your life. But people just don't understand how to use it. They don't understand what it is. It's a blessing and a disguise. It's a paradox. It's the light and the dark all wrapped up in the same package.
It is.
It's the up and the down, the left and the right. It's all wrapped up in that package, and people are going down the wrong pathway, thinking that you somehow there's some reserve there that you can tap into. There really isn't, and I've never seen anybody being able to do it. If anybody could find me an example of somebody successfully getting a check back from the United States Treasury that says, here's your birth certificate, Treasury a vault that we've opened the big door, taken all the notes out of it or gold out of it and sent it to you because it's always been yours. If anybody can point me to that, an example of that, I would love to see it. But
so would I.
I don't think I'll be here to see that one.
No,
somehow. I think I'll probably move on before I see that one.
Okay, let's move on to the next question then. And this is to do with property. And again, I just think it's people understanding what this credit energy really is and people's misconceptions or just pre-programming surrounding money itself and what that is. So the question is, if you buy something, for example, property that has been created by physical work and materials, why does just using your energy pay for it rather than earned money from your own efforts via your employment?
Very confusing, isn't it? And it can fox you for quite a long time. Because we've all been programmed, including me, to believe that the only way to get on in life is to go and work hard at something, get good at it, work hard at it, maybe create a business venture of some sort, get good at that, and accumulate, get some money, buy some stuff that might go up in value, like your house. And then you've kind of deserved. You've got you've earned your rights. You've got the stripes on your shoulders. You can now hold your head up high on the Monopoly board because you've accumulated things that you can maybe sell and go and buy something else with whatever you get from selling the originals. And that's what we've all been led to believe. But in reality, it's all a deception, because there's no substance to anything that you think you're buying, unless it's physical. You can pick it up and touch it. It's all you can really say you could buy. And that's why they don't want gold coins or silver coins. If you've ever wondered why do they get rid of coins? Why are they getting rid of notes? Because coins were physical. They actually had gold in them, although that was mostly gold and silver was taken out of coins gradually. It ended up to be a load of tin. In the end, it wasn't really worth anything. But they don't want money to have substance, and of course, it doesn't have substance. So you've got to start there, right? Does the money have substance? And the answer is no. The money is only backed by energy. They've in 1933 that went forward to 1944. Between that period, the creditors, which was the banking entities, took a mortgage out over everything on the Monopoly board. So they hold all those assets as their collateral. And they gave back to the people the ability to discharge their debts through energy, credit energy. So you can either discharge debts by doing something that creates energy, currency, and then using that to discharge debt, or you can recoup the energy you've already put on the board and discharge it and then recoup it again. So it's basically the same thing, but the difference between the two methods is the first method is going to take a lot of effort, and you've got to turn up and you've got to do things and you've got to put your energy into something. to get something back, like your wages, your profits in your business. You've got to do stuff to get that back, to get that return. Or you can recoup what you've already put on the board, and then use that, because that gives you the same effect of being able to spend, but without all the effort. You don't have to spend all that effort, invest all that effort, and struggle and battle against the tide, if you like, because the cost of living is getting worse, and the crisis is causing more stress. So you can relieve that stress by recouping the energy you've already put on the board, and that's really what our whole methodology is about. It's why put more energy on there when you've already put a lot on there, recoup it, and then put it back on, because it's like you can recycle it. It's like a whole recycling year by year. So the question, I think, is, it's a question that I would have asked many years ago, before I realised how the Monopoly board really works.
I think that's where it's come from.
It's a belief about, I must go and earn something to buy a property. Well, you're not going to buy a property. You're going to buy. Let's just use the word buy, because people understand it. You're going to exchange your digits in your account, or a debt. Some bank's going to create a debt from your signature, and you will be able to acquire the equitable title to a property, which means that you can use it, but it doesn't mean that you own it. It just means that you can use it, because the owners are those. I mean, even if you built it yourself, this is the irony, right? You could go out and you could go and purchase all of the materials to build a house. You could spend a year building it, break your back building your own house, and then you've got to register it to the Crown, to the state. And you've basically just handed them the legal title when you registered it. No, you spent a year building it. And they're going to say, thank you very much for that. And they're going to give you back the equitable title, which means that you can live in it. But then you have to pay them taxes to live in it, because it's theirs. But you built it. And you might have gone out and, spent all of your last penny to buy all the materials to build it, but it's still theirs as soon as you register it. And you can't have it unregistered, because if you do, they're going to come and take you to court and tell you that you don't have permission and your house isn't registered and all these kind of things. So they get you. They get you to register it, and that changes the whole game in their favour. So you just get to use it, basically.
Yeah, I think it is. It's people's it's a lot for people to get their head round to begin with. The pre-programming of what actually is money. I think when people that have been on the webinars understand what money actually is, and that it doesn't have any value, the whole notion of going to work for 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, whatever it is, and they're thinking that exchange of their labor is going to get them something back equal in value, they're actually not getting anything back in equal value. It's people really need to wrap their head around what money is and how it works, and then they will understand how this works as well. So, and I think that's where that question's come from, really. This is somebody who is thinking that earned money has more value to it than my credit or my energy.
No, you see, but let's just finish that question with this, right? Because I agree that if you didn't do anything at all, you just laid in bed for your whole life, and you could just recoup signature credit that you'd never put on the Monopoly board, that wouldn't be equitable. That would be, egregious to others that are recouping their signature credit.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that you can just lie back and do nothing at all ever from the age of 18 and recoup signature credit. I'm not saying
no.
You've got to have put something on the board in the past to recoup it. So you've already put a lot of energy on the board, and that's your qualification, is what energy have you put on the board. And if you haven't put any on the board, well, then of course you can't really recoup it, because there's nothing to recoup. So all you're doing in our system is recouping what you've already put on there, as opposed to expending new energy to put new new debt on the board because it's all debt.
Yeah.
That's your choice. I mean, you don't have to recoup your energy and use it again if you don't want to. But if you do, then you're going to have a more enjoyable lifestyle, in my opinion, than if you're spending 2/3 of your week working and 1/3 trying to recover from the 2/3 that you put your energy into your work.
Yeah, exactly. Now, this next question is an interesting one. And this is again to do with the recoupment process. And this particular person has asked, what about peer-to-peer lenders that are backed by institutional lenders, i.e. 50% peer-to-peer and 50% institutional lender?
Yeah, it's a good question. I suppose the question is that if you go and open an account at a peer-to-peer lender and you open it and put your money into it, like you deposit your signature credit energy into the peer-to-peer platform. And then they let it out and then you get an interest rate. Because if you're looking at it from, I ran a peer-to-peer platform for a while, so I know how they work. You've got two sides to it. You've got the lenders and the borrowers, basically.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like banks, the perception of how banks work, although it doesn't. The banks don't work like peer-to-peer at all. What you've got there is just two lots of ledgers, right? So if I wanted to come to your peer-to-peer platform, Andy, and said, okay, I've got $100,000 here, and I see that your platform is paying a higher interest rate than the bank is. So I'm going to deposit my $100,000 with your peer-to-peer platform. Now you owe that back to me, yeah, because you're basically operating as my trustee.
Yep.
And you, the platform manager, you go and lend it out to 10 people. 10 lots of 10,000. And they finance their projects with those digits, and then they pay interest to the peer-to-peer platform, and the peer-to-peer platform pays me an interest because I put my 100,000. That's basically how it's supposed to work. Well, when I put my 100,000 into your peer-to-peer platform, did I not deposit credit energy?
Yep.
So that's it. The transaction that went on between the platform and the whoever the projects are that they financed, that is signature energy from the platform. Somebody somewhere owns the platform, or is a number of shareholders. So their signatures created new investment, if you like, into the projects. It's another ledger being created. There is no transfer of the 100 from me to your platform, from your platform to 10 businesses that are seeking $10,000, in investment for their projects. That's another. You see, it's a program belief that money moves around. It doesn't move around. It's just there's new securities being created on every new transaction. If you unpack a peer-to-peer, a deposit is a transaction. That's signature credit. My signature credit, 100,000. Your platform invests 10 lots of 10,000 in other ventures. That's 10 lots, 10,000 new signature credit.
Yeah.
So now you've got 200,000 of signature credit. Yeah.
Yep.
And then the people who are running their investment, whatever they're doing with the 10,000 that they've received as an investment, they have to pay interest back. Well, that's another credit. That's another signature credit, another entity of signature credit, or another example of signature credit being created. So it's all. It looks like money's transferring around, but it's not.
It's not. It's not moving anywhere.
Not moving anywhere.
No.
They call it the velocity of money in economics. They say that the biggest sign of depression in an economy is the velocity of money. Well, that's not really the velocity of money. It's the number of signature credits that are going on. It's
Yeah,
not really
it's the number of new securities created, isn't it? That's what it is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Next question, or last question in this section, is: do you think that Trump, the IMF, or the IRS might change the rules regarding recoupment under the guise of maybe an international banking emergency?
It's nearly impossible for them to change the system.
Yeah.
Nothing impossible. But this system has been constructed over more than 100 years. It's been in operation. It's been built, and it's a very, very complex web. People are really, their experience is the bank that they work with or they have a account with. They don't know there's a massively complex web behind the scenes going on. All the nominee banks, investment banks, custody banks, administration banks, they're tracking and tracing of all the securities, exchanges. It's a massive web. If you're going to get rid of the current system, you're going to have to dismantle an enormous infrastructure, worldwide enormous infrastructure that's taken years to build, which is why Trump and his gang act the way they do, because they know that it's very difficult for anyone to rival the dollar system.
Yeah.
They basically have got a hubris and an arrogance, because it's like, yeah, well, if you're going to rival what we've got, it's going to take you years to build it. So that's why they're so arrogant, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the next category then, Ian, which I have headlined as global reach and applicability. So this shield of protection. Is this process rigid, or is it a universal technique that works in Australia, US, Jamaica, and South Africa?
Well, I guess they're talking about signature credit recoupment, are they? Or are they talking about the end?
So, yeah.
Credit. Well, if it's signature credit, then it's if the banks that you're using for your deposits, your signature credit deposits, are going into a bank somewhere in Australia, in South Africa, in the Caribbean, or wherever it is. The answer to the question is, where does that signature credit end up?
Yeah,
because it ends up in the United States. And that's what's going on. So it doesn't really matter where you're making the deposit. It matters where the signature credit ends up. And there's only a couple of exceptions in the whole world where it's a closed system. And North Cyprus actually is a closed system. Yeah. They use correspondent banks from Turkey, but everything in North Cyprus is like it's in a closed circuit, which is why they have cash here, a lot of cash here, because they're not really part of the digital system. They stand on their own, and North Korea does as well. But just about every other nation, they're all in the dollar system. And the best way to verify that is, I was listening a couple of weeks ago where some fellows high up in the United States Treasury was being interviewed on a mainstream channel that I stumbled on because I was interested to see what he was saying, where he was threatening to sanction banks in China if they supported Iran.
Okay.
And
that's quite a telling factor, isn't it, when you think about that for a second?
So how is a US Treasury officer threatening to sanction Chinese banks that are providing support to Iran? And it's because the Chinese banks are part of the IMF system.
Yeah.
If you want to go a little bit deeper, how did the Chinese revolution come about? They've become arguably the second largest economy in the world. Well, how did they achieve that? Where did all their renminbi come from? Or their yuan come from? It's ex nihilo. They created it ex nihilo, just like the Weimar Republic did in the 1930s, the German Weimar Republic, and it's all part of the banking cartel. It's all part of the dollar system. Yeah. So there you go. The Chinese are at war with the Americans, are they? Really? But they're all using basically the same money system. And who controls it? The creditor banks do. So the presentations that we are downloading from the news, they're complete and utter nonsense.
Okay. So next question is, can this protocol be used to recoup previously paid property taxes, or is it applicable for those who have spent a lifetime as a homemaker on benefits?
Yeah, well, again, you've got to put some signature energy on the monopoly board to recoup it.
Yeah.
If you're receiving benefits and then you're spending those benefits, which presumably you do because you have to live, you can recoup them. And some people might be thinking, well, that's a bit weird. Ian said earlier that you had to put your energy on the board. Well, receiving benefits isn't really energy, is it? It's not really your energy. You're getting it from the state. But it doesn't really matter where it comes from.
No.
It came into your account, and then that enabled you to make a deposit up to the balance that you had in your bank account to be able to spend it. So that signature, it doesn't matter that it came in from the state as a benefit, as a social insurance benefit. It's the fact it went out.
Yeah.
You made that deposit. It doesn't matter where it came from. It matters that you made a deposit and that created signature credit.
Okay. Next question. What if I never had a mortgage? Can this protocol still be used to eliminate credit card debt or stop an imminent car repossession?
Well, there's only one way to stop a repossession, and that is using the art of legal warfare. And that is by looking at the errors that the claimants have made when they put their case to the court. And they've all, in my experience, and I've looked at a lot of cases, they always make an error somewhere. And court cases are not about right and wrong. Court cases are about procedure. And if you miss a step in the procedure, you can lose. You can have the case struck out. So the art of legal warfare, which is something that we're going to be offering the membership going forward, is algorithmic systems that will be able to look and see where is the Achilles heel of the claimant. What is that weakness? What is that mistake that they've made, or maybe they've made more than one in the way that they put their case together, and then let's attack that whilst recouping signature credit. So you're stalling and you're holding them at the gates, if you like, if you think of it like a fortress. You're holding the enemy at the gates because you're finding their weaknesses, you're looking at their Achilles heel, you're slowing them down, you're bogging them down in their process, whilst you are recouping signature credit energy into your private trust, which is your asset fortress, which you can then use it to discharge the problem, the debt, the tax, whatever, and then recoup that discharge. So, that's the peaceful way of doing it. You just hold the enemy at the gates. You might not beat them because you might not have enough power in your presentment to beat them, but you probably can slow them down for a long time. While you're waiting for your signature credit to come in. And then, who cares? Then you're just going to discharge, recoup the discharge the next year. You can only be a net gainer in that.
Problem gone, solved peacefully. Okay. So next question, or next category, should I say, is now to do with AI, because we've spoken a fair bit about this as well, and just the refiling process, timelines for these. So for existing members, here we go. When will the bank recoupments actually materialize? And why have some dates for EIN progress recently changed?
Well, I can't comment on individual cases because I don't know the detail. But all I can say is that the grantor trusts have had to have been applied for twice in the early ones, because in the very early days of 2026, we were looking at installing a trustee, which was ROS Ecclesiastical Trust, and then looking for that to get the banking arrangements in place to receive the recoupments as a trustee. Well, there was an issue with that. So we had to pivot and we had to get new trusts, grantor trust this is, that were individually going to get bank accounts, individual bank accounts, because that's viable. Whereas one bank account for one trust, there was a problem with what's called the IRS TREAS, TREAS 310, where they wouldn't pay or transfer, hundreds, thousands of recoupments to one bank account. They would only do it if the entity that is expecting and entitled to the recoupment had its own bank account. Individual bank accounts, which, by the way, is what we were doing in 2025 before the sabotage event.
So hopefully that answers your questions about why we've had to refile and why we've had to get new trusts. I can't answer the EIN question in terms of a member's personal progress, but I can speak to it with some experience from my wife's progress. And one of the reasons why EIN dates or the progress date for EINs may change is that sometimes we get EINs back from the IRS, as my wife has, but the details attached to that EIN are incorrect. And that's an error at the IRS's department. So we have to then refile again and say, no, this isn't correct. This is what it should say on the EIN documentation. That's happened a couple of times with my wife. She's had 2 EINs come back. They've both had IRS errors on them. So we've had to reapply for a third time. So that may be, if you remember, why you're seeing the date change. It might be that we're just having to reapply because the IRS have messed it up. And we're now having to correct that for you. So in terms of the AI question, when will the AI tools be fully available for members to draw their own legal papers for US court cases?
Well, it's very high on the priority list of things to build. We're using AI now to road test it, and it's doing a very, very good job, I have to say. But it does need quite a bit of framework. It needs guidance. You can't just ask it to create all your documents unless you know what you're asking for, and you need to know what they mean. So there's pilot schemes going with it where AI systems are being used to create documents and to reference and look at where the Achilles heel is of a case, the claimant's Achilles heel. And right now we're rolling out the Ian Clifford avatar, which is the information, the digital twin of me, really. God forbid, with everything that I've talked about within the last year and all the research papers I've written, all that knowledge in there. That's the first project, which is very, very near to being rolled out. And then we'll be looking at, probably based on members' demand, really. But I should imagine that the mortgage foreclosure will quite likely be the first one AI system, because there's a rising number of people out there going through that experience of mortgage foreclosure.
Okay. But there's a lot to put into that, like you said. It's the pilots that we're running are in different countries because the procedure is going to be different in each country, and the AI technology needs that context front to back of what does that journey look like and everything in between. So we're mapping and building all of that out at the moment to give the AI all the context and information it needs to be able to be able to work successfully in your specific country, I guess.
It will be, it's a way to help people and to assist them in their hour of need, really.
Yeah.
While they're waiting for their signature credit recoupment to come in. So it is, absolutely is part of the plan. I've used it enough now to know that it's capable of doing what we want.
Yeah.
We just got to get our IT team to build it out with a lot of assistance from me, because you've got to be able to step out all the different things that can happen and how the AI is going to react in all different scenarios. It's all possible, and it will be made available. And then if people start to use it, then of course we will then roll out other AIs for other types of court cases. But these things, there's a lot of investment of time to put into them. So you're only going to do it if there's demand, really.
Of course.
There will be demand. Yeah.
Certainly, like you said, I think the mortgage foreclosure will be a very popular one.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So next question, from beginning to conclusion, what is a realistic time frame for mortgage recoupment once the initial OID is received?
So if you've already got a grant or trust, and we've already got a linkage between the mortgage, the mortgage provider, they sold the security to the investment bank, we've tracked all that, our AI system, which is working, by the way, for that part. That's all been done. If that's all been done, and the taxpayer, that's the investment bank's ledger, is sufficient to finance all the recoupments underneath that payer, because it might, there's almost certainly going to be more than one member trying to recoup against that tax ledger. So presuming that there is enough taxes paid, and we haven't had to move the taxes from other modules onto the 945 module, from the point of filing 1099 OID, you'd expect a wages and tax transcript within 3 months.
Yeah.
And then you'd expect from wages and tax transcript 1041 to receipt of funds. You'd expect that really in 2 months. So about 5 months, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's based on realistic timelines that we experienced, pre-sabotage, in terms of what was happening then, and the timelines where we started to see the tax transcripts coming through last June, July time, didn't we?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So next question, what do existing members need to do to adjust from the infinite money protocol, as in 3 years of bank accounts, to the new currency creation protocol, signature recoupment, back to the age of 18?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I should imagine that most people that are doing the infinite money, which was really limited to 3 years, previous 3 years.
Yeah.
It's now, I've carved out a pathway from recouping from age 18.
Yeah.
So we need all the details. We basically need to go back in and say to each of those members that wants to do this, upgrade it and say, look, you've got all these other signature credit opportunities from age 18 up to the infinite money filings that have been put together, and we need to upgrade it, and probably file that in a different year, because we're already in progress of filing for the 2025 year. So you can't really add to that. You can add to the 2026. So that would be my my guess. And I think what I probably should do is do a webinar on that, just on that.
For existing members. Because I can't imagine existing members not wanting to do this, because for many, we've spoken about this before, that not for all, but for some of our members, maybe they haven't put a lot on the Monopoly board just because they are struggling, and the cash that's going out of their bank accounts, like the question we had earlier about somebody maybe being on benefits, maybe they're on a very, very low amount of income, minimum wage, whatever it may be, or just on basic benefits, might be, £12,000 to £15,000 that's moving through their bank account each year, or that they're putting onto the Monopoly board, 3 years worth of that, of course, that would be nice. 3 times 15 is £45,000. Who wouldn't want that? But it's not a life-changing amount of money for them to be able to go and maybe buy themselves a family home, or buy some land, or do the things that they want to do to set themselves up with the asset fortress further down the line. Whereas if they go back to the age of 18, maybe when the economy was better than it is now, maybe they were making more money than they're making even now. That amount of timeline certainly would, I feel, be life-changing for the vast majority of people. So, yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah. There's no doubt that those that are already doing infinite money, which was originally, people used to call it the bank payment recoupment, because it was, I think, a convenient name. They're almost certainly that those have got a lot of signature credit that they're not factoring into that recoupment, which they could. But it wouldn't be in the same year. It'd have to be the next year, I think.
Yeah. So that would be, if we were to do an interview on that, or even a webinar on that, then at least we can get final prepped or prepping during 2026 for when 2026 is final.
Yeah, I think a webinar on that, within the next, not this weekend coming up, because we've already got one, but maybe the week after we do one.
Okay.
That would be good timing, because then we'll be ready to onboard all that additional, all the data we need to do the signature credit for previous years. So
yeah, exciting stuff. Okay, let's move on. So next category, Ian, is to do with ways to get started as well. So in terms of the track record that we have with this and ways to get started that you mentioned on the webinar on Saturday, the first question is it true that an upfront fee is no longer required for the Monopoly Game Changer? And how can those on low income with no assets be helped?
Well, yes, it is true. Clearly, and obviously we can't operate as an organization and finance our own costs pre-recoupments coming in without new donations coming in. It's just an impossibility. And we've got to keep the ship afloat to be able to deliver to all those people that are expecting to get their recoupments this year. And so we've got to keep going. But having said that, there are a lot of people out there who just don't have the funds available. So what I did was I thought about, well, how can I solve that problem? Because if we say to everybody, you can enroll with no donation, then we would devastate our own cash flow. And eventually we'd have to close up, and then nobody would get anything. Because we've survived following a massive sabotage event in September. With bringing new members in and upgrading existing, and that's the only way we can finance our organization. And we've done well, but we've got to keep on doing that so that we can deliver to those that have already put in the past. So I recognize that there are some people that can't help us with that because they just don't have the budget. But they can use their network. Everybody's got a network. So if you take the example of someone could bring 10 people, just invite 10 people to come to any of my webinars going forward at £100 rewards per person to come. That's 1,000 in credit. Well, that can buy you a fairly, a decent amount of signature credit recoupment. You could buy 500,000. You could say, okay, I'll do 500,000 signature credit recoupment and bring 10 people to a webinar. And now you're off the ground. And then, once you've got some more, maybe you get some more people to come to a webinar, and you can come in and maybe top that up. I don't want people coming every month with 3 people in a webinar. So can I have a top? That would be impossible. But there would be stages where you'd be able to top it up. But you could get off the ground with basically just bringing 10 people in, and that's £1,000 of credit that you can offset. And the lowest entry point to get started is 500. So you'd actually start at a decent level. You could bring 5 people and start off at the lowest level of recruitment, and get off the ground. So to me, that's how, that was my way of solving that problem, because some of those 5-10 people you bring, may well enroll, and that's going to be beneficial for everybody in the community. So you're buying your way in through bringing other people into the framework, into our system. And that's how you can do it, by referrals.
And I think £100 for each referral. Let's be honest, who doesn't know 5 people? It's 5 people, guys. If you're struggling and you want to get started, then it's simply referring 5 people would be your entry point. That is not an impossible task. It really isn't. I think it's very reasonable.
And I think there might be a misunderstanding. Those 5 people don't have to buy anything. They don't have to enroll. They just have to attend the webinar. So if you can get 5 people to attend any of my webinars going forward for 70% of the webinar, and they might learn something, I hope they will, that is useful for them, then you can enroll. That's it. So that's my solution to the for those people who really are struggling, but they could still get started. There may be people out there who say, well, I don't know 5 people. I can't help you if you're one of those, but you're going to have to find 5 people. Go out and find them. Go and talk to some people and say, would you like to come to this webinar? You never know. They might say, well, that's interesting. I'll come to that webinar.
Look at it this way. Here's an example for you guys. If I had a briefcase with $500,000 inside that briefcase, and I said to you, you can have this briefcase, all you've got to do is go and get 5 people to come and have a chat with me for an hour and a half about a particular subject, and you can have the briefcase. Now, would you say, I don't know 5 people, or would you go and find 5 people?
And the best way to do it is what you've done, Andy, is, on social media. You do a little video, you stick it out there, and, who knows? You might get a big following of people that want to come to the webinar. Or you might already have a network of people in your social media. If you're a social media user, you might already have a load of people that you can promote the link to that will come just because they're intrigued to come. And what they're going to get is they're going to get access to the Ian Clifford avatar as well. So even if they, don't have the time to come to the webinar on the first time you invite them, you are going to give them access to the Ian Clifford avatar, and they can ask some questions, and that might motivate them to come to the webinar.
Yep. So plenty of ways you can do this, guys. Like I said, you might not quote unquote know 5 people, but if you're on social media, how many quote unquote friends have you got on social media that you actually don't know, but they are connected with you? And that's the thing. If they're connected with you and they see your content, that is a great way to leverage this referral program for sure. So let's move on, Ian. Next question. Can I pledge? I'm assuming this is an existing member, and I know the answer to this, but we'll ask it anyway. Can I pledge a portion of my existing pending recruitment to pay for additional protocol fees?
Well, unfortunately, no, because that doesn't help us to stay operational, which is our current challenge. Is how do we stay operational when everybody wants what we are doing for without having to donate? It's a constant challenge. So no, unfortunately, you can't. you can refer people to the webinars. That's what you can do.
Yeah, exactly as we've just said. Start referring, and that'll do the same. That will get you the same end result. All right. Next question is to do with track record and evidence. What is the success rate of this process in the UK? And have the leaders of this mission successfully done this for themselves? It's definitely a new member question.
Yeah, well, ironically, I haven't received any recoupments. And a lot of people might think, well, that's a bit strange. Why hasn't Ian got his? Well, honestly, I put other people ahead of me. I really did. Other people have got their recoupments in 2024. There was one guy who got 2 checks when we're in the very early pilot scheme that we ran in 2024. He used to be one of our team members. And then the head of our tax filing department, Lisa Griffin, she got her recoupments. She's UK origin. And she got hers in 2025. And I didn't get mine because mine was sabotaged, as Andy's was, and as many thousands of others were. So I was expecting mine at the back end of last year. Well, some of mine. It was not all of it. It was some of it. And so I didn't get mine, but others did. And we had one guy in the US who had 2 checks in our pilot scheme. And we've got there's another US guy who wasn't actually, we didn't actually do the filing for him, but he used the exact same methodology that I had, that I'd made available, and he got his check. I think he got electronic. It wasn't a check; it was a Trias 310 transfer straight from the IRS to Charles Schwab. So he got his using exactly the same method. Many others followed him after that and got theirs. So it's not, we weren't doing the filing, but exactly the same method that was being used, because there was a group of people that learned it from me. There was one other guy who was nearly there, and I had a meeting with him, gave him some additional pointers as to how he could make it work for his group. And then lots of people adopted that, and in 2025 got theirs, and they're still I think they're still filing now in 2026. I think the group has got bigger. So the method works. There's no question about the method. The track record is proven, as it's if you want to verify that the IRS recognised the process and sign it off, is the wages and tax transcripts, for which you've done the interviews about, Andy. So
I have, yeah. So if this question is coming from a brand new person, welcome to the Republic of Old Souls. We're grateful to have you with us. And if you want to see some evidence of the IRS tax transcripts, then go on to the ROS Media platform. If you're already on there, then you want to look for an interview that I did with a colleague of mine here, Ange. We ran a 20-minute interview where we actually screen share and go through in detail a multitude of received and verified tax transcripts that run into the tens, sometimes into the $20-25 million recoupments. Some of these recoupments are, and everything in between. So we're giving you a good broad spread of smaller recoupments, huge recoupments, middle-sized recoupments. You'll see a whole plethora on there. And that is essentially the IRS saying, this belongs to you. Where are we sending it? So the transcript is the hard gate. That is the proof you need. The only process that needs to take place after that is the banking side of things. Unfortunately, we were sabotaged before we could get the banking in place. So that's what we're doing. We're doing the same process. Nothing's changed. We've just started again. Proven process. Go and watch that video, and I think that'll help you out a great deal. So, Ian, that comes to the end of all the questions for the webinar on Saturday. So I guess the next thing really is to talk about call to action, next steps for people as well. I mean, as far as what I would say, if you were new to attending the webinar on Saturday, and you need help moving forwards, you like what you've seen, it makes sense, you would like to move forwards, then you can book a call with one of our consultants. Okay, you do need to have registered on the platform. So if you are a registered member on the platform and you want to book a call with a consultant because you'd like to move forwards with the Monopoly Game Changer protocol, you can go here. You can go to this web address, which is lvfree.click.tge. Okay, lvfree.click.tge, and you'll be able to pick a day and a time that suits you and get on a call with a consultant, and they'll help you with your journey. If you are wanting to support us moving forwards, we've already spoken about the referral program, £100 in credit towards your own protocols for every person that you refer. So use your referral links, get people in. For every person that you bring into this mission and every person that you bring into the Republic, there's £100 in credit towards your own protocols. And then the last thing that I would say is, if you are an existing member as well, go to your dashboard, because I know that a lot of you don't, not regularly enough, that's for sure. So I would recommend that go to your dashboard today or this evening. Just ensure that your applications are up to date and that we've got the necessary information that we need from you to be able to facilitate this for you. I've said it on every interview we've done for Q&As, and I'll say it again, and I'll continue to say it. We move at the speed of the most prepared members. We can't do it any other way. It wouldn't be fair for members who are proactive to be waiting for the stragglers. So if you're a straggler, then go and log into your platform, make sure it's all up to date, and then we can help you facilitate that. So that's all I've got to say, Ian. I guess the only other thing that I would leave people with is, now that we've done the Q&A for last Saturday's webinar, a great segue would be, if you're interested in learning more, then register for this coming Saturday's webinar. Ian and I are going to be doing a sneak peek on what that's going to be about. So we're going to do a 15-20-minute preview on upcoming webinar for May the 2nd. If you want to register for that, you can do it from your platform, or you can simply go to roswebinars.is and you can register there. So that's all I've got to say, Ian. Final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I've always got some final thoughts. I really want people to understand and comprehend how the Monopoly board works.
Yeah.
So I've recently published a paper at Ecclesia Law Institute which explains it. The critical foundational knowledge aspects that will help you to comprehend what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why it works. It's all in one document on the platform. I put it out on Telegram, and I think at the moment there's over 400 of our members who've read it. It's only been out a day or two. I think it was out Sunday night, late Sunday night. So it seems to be popular. Yeah. And I know that not everybody wants to know how the engine of the car works, but in this game, you need to know the rules. And I've put all the critical rules of how it works and why it works in that document. It's I think it's called do you want to know how the commercial monopoly board works? Yeah. And it's on Ecclesia Law Institute. If you go and type Ecclesia, ECCLESIA law, I think it's .org or .is now, I think. Yeah.
It's the top one in the search. Perfect. Yep. Okay. Well, guys, we're going to be running a sneak peek of the webinar for this coming Saturday, May 2nd. You can register at roswebinars.is or on your platform. But for now, have a great day, and we will see you on the next webinar Q&A. Bye for now.
Bye now.